All right, welcome to another episode of AI for Apologetics. I'm David, and today we're going to be talking about spotting the gaps. This one's really, it goes into honing your craft again, and we're still using chat. I'm using ChatGPT, but you can use whatever you want. And we're using it as kind of a partner to help us grow in our effectiveness as a somebody who speaks about Christianity publicly and with people who don't always agree with us. So one of the core concepts I'm going to dig into this time is this idea that I first heard of it from Sean McDowell in a book that he wrote called Steelman, the argument. Because what a lot of people do, and you'll see this on social media all the time, is they will misrepresent a view and then confidently knock it down. Well, that doesn't get anybody anywhere, because if you misrepresent a view, who cares if you can defeat that view? So what we want to do as Christians is we want to represent the other people's views as accurately as possible, and if possible, we even want to make their argument stronger before we engage with it. That shows respect to what they believe, and that we're not just trying to find some loophole to undercut what they believe. So here I'm gonna show you a little bit about how to prepare for that. So here I've got my ChatGPT window open. Like I said, you can use whatever, Claude, Gemini, Copilot even. There's probably hundreds out there, but this is just what I'm using today. And so I'm going to say, give me the strongest atheist argument against the historical case for the resurrection. Be thorough. Now, really, with Chat GPT, hopefully you've seen by now that I just interact with it like it's a person. I say please, and sometimes I say thank you, and it's real conversational, which is really the beauty of it. People talk about being a strong prompt engineer, and that's really how you get the most out of ChatGPT. And there's some validity to that, but as long as you treat it like it's a conversation, if you say something to it and it gives you back something that's not useful, just tell it that's not useful, and tell them what you really want, clarify, just like you would with a person. And so. Yeah, so when I said be thorough here, that's something kind of technical about ChatGPT 5 is it will try to decide how long it needs to think about things. And so some of the things you've seen me do, it responds just like that. On this one, I had this monologue sort of prepared because I knew it was going to think for a while because I said be thorough. And so it does a little deeper research. And notice what I didn't say in here is I didn't say steelman, but oh, it knows that word. It gave me the steelman argument against, um, so that an atheist or religiously neutral historian can make against the historical claim that Jesus physically rose from the dead. And if we end up looking at this, it's pretty thorough. And now, does it defeat, historic Christianity? I mean, that's, I guess, for the audience to decide. Um, but if you're going to go and defend the historicity of the resurrection, these are the kinds of arguments you're going to face. These are really, really good, well thought out ones. Um, the minimal facts is underdetermined. The ambiguity of the appearances. Consensus does not mean causation. Just because a lot of people agreed something happened doesn't specify what happened. It doesn't mean it's a miracle or a resurrection. And the resurrection import adds a unique divine intervention to the hypothesis space. Natural hypotheses don't. I've got a rebuttal for that, but um, says the empty tomb is not securely established. Um, and on and on and on and on and on. Um, and so if you learn the historical argument by seeing a talk by Gary Habermas or J. Warner Wallace or somebody like that, it sounds really good. And it sounds like, how could anybody ever argue against that? Well, here we see a lot of the arguments, because when they're at a Christian conference on a limited amount of time speaking to Christians, they're going to lay out that positive case for the historical the historical case for the resurrection. They don't have time in a setting like that to go through each of these possible objections. Um, and so, here we go. Here we got all these possible objections. So if you really want to be a master of this argument, you're gonna want to be familiar with all this. And look, ChatGPT tells us that it will build the strongest Christian replies. So yes, let's see that. Didn't have to type that much. It's just a habit because I treat this as conversational. Um, so now we've got miracle skepticism assumes naturalism, right? Because and that was something that I noticed in the upper thing. The criticism is they're basically saying we reject any explanation that's not naturalistic. We reject miracles. We reject supernatural just out of the box, and that's what um, a lot of their argument was based on up above. So here we've got an extensive rebuttal to that very thorough critique. And so now it'll put them side by side in a comparison. So sure, let's do that. And here we go, side by side comparison chart. And so it's got the skeptical argument and the Christian response. Look at that. And so it says the earliest source, 1 Corinthians 15, um, and it says it dates within a few years. Um, so that's interesting, right? But we're going to see something else. So now we've got all these laid out, and I've been asking a bunch of questions that are youth group centered. So it wants to know if I want a youth group question, um, but watch this. I want to dig into just one thing real quick. Um, let's see. You said that 1 Corinthians 15. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say the creed. The creed in 1 Corinthians 15 dates to within a few years of the resurrection. I've heard it actually was a few months. Can you clarify? Let's see what it says. It was actually, I think I saw Lee Strobel recently, and look, Lee Strobel's the one that turned me onto this. This is not a new development, but it's not one that a lot of people have heard yet. And it says, yeah, you're right to catch that nuance. It's okay to challenge ChatGPT on anything, and it a lot of times will dig deeper and try and find something. So, Paul writes to the Corinthians, so we know this creed. Scholarly consensus on dating is that Paul got it at least by the time he visited Peter and James in Jerusalem around 35 AD. That's 2 to 3 years after the crucifixion. And it was already formulated by then, which means it might be earlier than that. We've got all these scholars here that say it's within a couple months to years of the crucifixion. Um, and let's see if they have it in here. Even Bart Ehrman, a skeptic, says that it's in there. And let's see, are there any other non-Christian um, scholars that think it's within months? How about I'll say, yeah, I'll just leave it at that and see what it comes up with. Um, so Gerd Ludemann, that's who I was actually looking for. He's a atheist scholar, formerly Christian, no longer Christian apparently, but says that it can be, he says no later than 3 years. Um, and let's see, there. And months comes from the sympathetic structure. Uh, Non-Christian scholars usually stop at 1 to 3 years because for philosophical reasons, because month sounds like it grants too much immediacy to the Christian proclamation. So there we go. It's one of the earliest historical claims in all of ancient history. And if you read that crude, I was um, combining Ludemann with Creed, then you'll see that. that it talks about the resurrection, that he was died and he was resurrected, right? And that's coming from, um, I mean, conservatively, say 3 years after that happened, not enough time for a legend to develop. So sorry, that was some kind of a rabbit trail, but I think it was a pretty interesting one. Um, and so now we've seen how we can use it to prepare ourselves for questions, and then, help us prepare the answers to the toughest questions we may get. Um, and now I'm gonna say, let's go back and say I'm giving a talk on the resurrection. We've been kind of on that in this video, and at the end there's going to be some real Q&A, say like at a college campus. So I said, pretend you're a skeptic who just heard my defense of the resurrection and give me three tough follow-up questions. And this is going to be a little different than what we had earlier. Were like scholarly objections. Like if I wrote a paper, these are things that could be written back. These are things that people might ask at an open mic during a presentation. Um, and and then, here we go. We've got these, and you can see how the tone is different on this one than it was on those early ones. These are more like what somebody would say just off the cuff. Um, and how about now? How about questions from a rowdy college audience of skeptics and I'll just say skeptics. Let's see if the tone changes there. Rowdy rapid fire. Come on, dead people don't rise. That's not history. It's zombie mythology. You keep quoting the Bible to prove the Bible. That's circular. So now these people aren't necessarily engaging with what we said, even. And if in any good presentation on the historical case for the resurrection is going to cover this number three thing, but they may ask this anyway, right? Um, so do you want to draft short, sharp comebacks here? I'm going to say just go watch a Frank Turek video. We won't do that here. Um, so there we go. That's a way to prepare ahead of time before you're in front of an audience. Prepare what objections you're going to get, and especially from different audiences. I don't think you can over prepare on something like this. The more you practice, and the more you research, the stronger you're going to be when you're in front of a crowd. People aren't going to ask you questions that have never been asked before. That's just not going to happen. And so with ChatGPT, it can help you anticipate those questions and formulate the answers ahead of time so you're not caught flat-footed. So that's how to use ChatGPT to spot the gaps in your knowledge and in your presentation and in your responses. So hopefully that was helpful. This has been another AI for Apologetics. And if you got any questions, if there's something you'd like me to cover, then you can just leave me a comment and I'll see it, or get a hold of me in whatever way you know how. And that's it for now, and I'll see everybody later.